Hey everyone, welcome to another interview with Matt Danzig. He was part of the There.com's developer team back in early betas, and I am very grateful that we were able to steal him away from his busy work to do this 1 hour interview. Would you like to say hello?
Sure. Hi, everybody.
Okay, so I will be asking Matt some questions, and then I will be taking the questions from the members and ask them to Matt. So here we go. All right, our first question is, what type of work, developments did you do in There.com?
Um, well, I did a lot of things, but mostly I was on the art team, and when I first joined, I was the first artist that was hired at there. And let's see, my role initially was concept artist. My job was to um, realize other people's ideas about what IMVU could be, and of course, slowly but surely influence what other people thought there should be. Um, and then I grew into the role of art director and then kinetic art director. Or rather, I was in charge of all of the aspects of there that moved. So the avatar, the pets, vehicles, and even ambient motion in the environments. Although I must give full credit to Don Carson and Craig Maitland as they were in charge of the environments at there.
Awesome, that's really nice of you crediting them. Yeah, they did a lot of work for there, and we are all very grateful of it.
Yeah, and they were they're just super talented guys. I still work with Don directly, and although I don't work with Craig directly anymore, I know he's doing very well, and I wish him all the best.
That's great. Um, so my next question is, what was it like working with Will and Jeffrey?
Let's see. I'll take the first one. I'll take the first name second. um, so Jeffrey, what can I say? Jeffrey and I had a wonderful connection sort of as soon as I came on board, or at least I felt that way. Jeffrey, if you're listening, um, Jeffrey is just wonderful, and so he's the guy who would stay up all night, late nights, trying to get that one feature to work really well. And by work really well, I don't just mean that it functioned, but that it behaved really well, that it was charming and fun and lovely. So, for example, when I first came on, Jeffrey, one of his main projects was building the dog, and the original dog at there was so cute. It was so great, so cute. We ended up not going with it initially because of the CEO at the time thought that um, consumers of virtual worlds wanted more realistic things, um, and so we had to move on from that dog. But man, I miss that dog. Such a cute dog. It was just too. The body was a round ball, like a hoppity hop, and the head was another ball, and it just it just bounced around, and was able to catch frisbees and walk with you, and it was just so wonderful. Anyhow, so I miss Jeffrey a lot. We don't get to see each other much um, now that I'm working at InView, but um, I do wish him the best because we had a lot of fun working hard together and singing and playing piano late at night. It was a wonderful part of my InView memory. And let's see, Will Harvey. I, I got to work very, very closely with Will Harvey because Will and I started a company together once we left um, um, there. And that company is called IMVU or IMVU or however you want to pronounce it, Quahog. Um, and so Will and I worked very, very closely together for many years. And let's see, at at Air, we worked closely together on several projects like the Avatar system, the terrain editor, the um, several vehicles like the hoverboat, um, and several other vehicles like the jetpack and the hoverbug, and a lot of the more fun projects like that.
Awesome, that's great. Do you want to discuss about like the vehicles that you guys were working on?
Sure. Let's see. So the first few vehicles that we made at there, they're all prototypes, and they were wonderful in their own right, but they weren't charming. They could have used a lot more work, or insofar as like when somebody walked up to them, we wanted people to go, "Oh, that's cool," and know what it was immediately. And that wasn't always the case with a lot of the early vehicles that we built. Um, However, the behavior of those vehicles was always really fun, because we had the physics running, and it was really fun to be able to hop on a jetpack or a hoverbug and fly around and explore. But Will and I really wanted to make vehicles that pushed the boundaries a little bit of what a virtual world could do. So we looked at the buggy, the two-person and the single buggy, and we thought, if we were designing there from scratch, what would we really want? And I said, well, I really like to fly. I mean, regardless of the jetpack that we have, and we had been working on jetpacks for a long time at this stage, but I really wish I could fly, and I don't wish that I could fly like a plane, where I'd need a runway to land. Rather, I wish that I could fly, like I could just lift up into the air and swoop and just otherwise enjoy myself, like a theme park ride or something. Um, and Will, we didn't resolve it that day, but Will went back and was thinking about what I had said for a long time, and one day he came back and he said, you did a couple of drawings very early on about, some flying devices that could be fun. And so we poured through all of my old sketches, which I can show you at some point if you'd like. And I had
Awesome.
animals, flying animals in there, and all all kinds of really wacky stuff.
Flying cows you have?
We had let's see, we had flying manta rays. We had what else did I have? Oh,
Come
like
on, you don't have
turtles.
flying cows? Come on, you don't get the joke?
You know, as I'm talking to you, I'm going to pull up some of those old concepts. I think no, I don't have them on this computer. Um,
It's all
but the we had flying turtles and all kinds of fun animal rides that you could play with. Bears. In fact, the first teleporter idea was a mole. Like you would jump on the top of this giant mole, and it would hop up into the air and then dive into the ground and dig, and then your screen
that's
would go black.
interesting.
Yeah, and then your screen would go black, and then your screen would fade into the new location, and the mole would dig out of the ground there. Like it
Was
was a
there a reason why that the teleport screen was black? Like, was there like a story behind that?
it's theatrical. It's something that theater and films use to convey the passage of time or a new location or a new setting. So that's we certainly didn't invent it. We decided to go with a convention that a lot of people already knew about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'd love to say that, well, we're poets, you see, and we know truth. That's just not the case.
I see. My next question is, what was your favorite memory of there?
Hmm. In there or in at their offices.
Let's start with in there, and then you could talk about at the office.
Okay. So in there, you know, one of my favorite things to do was to explore and then discover people as opposed to um, see who was on my list and try to get to where they were. And you know, this kind of made me a loner when I was using there. But I always just thought it was right. I always just thought it was so much fun to just see what was going on in the virtual world that I was not in charge of, and or that even people were not in charge of. Especially, you know, once we introduced some artificial intelligence and some life out in the world, it was fun to just go see what that life was doing and what it was spending its time with. And so I would love to hop on the hoverboard, which you know, that's just one of my more favorite things that we had built, both from a design standpoint and from an activity standpoint, because the hoverboards were so fluid. You know what I mean? They
Yeah,
they were the vehicle that reacted the most with what there was, like this physical place, but weren't jittery and you know, hard to manage like a buggy.
yeah, I know what you mean. I remember
Yeah.
when I was like just driving around island to island. Whenever I flip over and I almost landed on my head, it would just bounce me right off the vehicle. So luckily, I don't break my head. So what about the office did you like about?
Well, and before we get there, one of my
Oh
other
yeah,
one of the things was to go. I had two kind of favorite locations. One was Saja or Saya, however you want to pronounce it, because I was the art director for that environment, and
by the way, great job on that. I gotta really thank you on that because that the design look of Zaha is actually pretty outstanding. Like how like everything is like floating in the air, but you don't like see like the like a glowing thing on the bottom to actually like hovering. You know what I mean?
hmm hmm Yeah, and so I really like the way that came out. The art team just did a great job on it, um, and so I liked going there and sort of floating around, and again seeing what would happen, and sort of casually, mistakenly coming upon people, you know, just finding them and going, hey, what's going on? Um, Another thing was there was an Easter egg location inside of one of the temples in the monkey ruins, and so if you knew where the secret entrance was, you could
Oh,
get
I know you're
into
talking about. Yeah.
the Clucky Shrine. And so I have a thing for chickens, and so every project I work on, including there, always has some chicken references. And so we built this shrine to a chicken, you know, this chicken that had, you know, fought in some war or something, and he was under a spotlight in this sort of basement deep within this temple, and I loved going there and hanging out because I knew that the people who happened to make their way in there were like hardcore,
Ah,
you
now,
know.
well, now, no, what's interesting is that why was the chicken in the monkey ruins and not like in like some other location?
Well, because we worked really late. we we worked really late hours at there. We worked really hard, It was not uncommon for me to work 72-hour days at there, especially in the first couple of years. And so um, what sounds like a wonderful idea after not having slept for a long time might not always be a wonderful idea. And so that's why Clucky ended up in the monkey ruins and not some monkey statue. But it ended up being fun because, um, some of your users might, or your listeners might, know that the whole Clucky thing was or the whole chicken thing was pervasive in there for the people who had been around for a long time. It wasn't like everybody really loved chickens, but when you saw a chicken, or when you interacted with some sort of like hidden chicken thing, it sort of set you apart. It made you cool. And so that was the kind of thing I was after, is some sort of universal language that was funny, but meant something more than just, a gag, something that would be pervasive. So do you agree? I mean, did that work?
Yeah, definitely. I actually do agree on it. I remember when I was paintballing with Bash Community. He was hosting a paintball event. I think it was like late in the fall of '09, I think it was. And he was hosting in the Monkey Ruins. And while we were painting, I jumped off the tower and landed in the chicken hidden area. And I would hide in there, and whenever I saw a Vash or any of the members, I would just shoot them up in the air, and they don't even know where I am, and they're trying to shoot me. I'm like, yeah, nice try, good luck finding me.
Nice. Yeah, it was easy to be a griefer for a long time. Very easy.
Yeah. So, what about the office did you like about, like, the staff?
Well, we had a great team. I mean, you have to understand we were very much like a military organization. We worked very, very closely for years, with very tight deadlines and very, very tough um, um, design decisions. Like, hey, we'd like to make a ball, a beach ball, and then our engineers would come back and say, hey, that's great. You can use 7 polygons to make that beach ball, or else it won't work. You know, and so seven polygons to make a beach ball is tough. It's tough. So we
Love,
worked we
right?
worked really closely together, and we had ups and downs, but mostly ups because we were working on something new that could change the world. And you have to remember, at the time that we were working on this, I mean, the success stories of that era, like the Second Lives and the World of Warcraft, didn't even exist yet. And so we were doing something that really, to our knowledge, no one else had ever done, and tackling problems that there were no, you couldn't go to Google and search how do you make a physics engine. Whereas today, there are tools for that kind of thing, and they're pretty
Yeah.
cheap actually. If we had only known, but we worked really, really well together. We got together outside of work. We hung out all the time, and we're good friends. And a lot of us are still very good friends. And other things, we at one point, Will Harvey, as a present for everybody for working so hard for so long, got everybody in the office these little electric scooters,
Oh, that's so
and
funny.
and so they were called Zappies. They didn't last very long in the marketplace, but they were called Zappies, and we used to race the Zappies around the office. Our office was kind of like um, a big loop, and you could ride around the whole thing down the hallways
How
in a
fast
circle.
were you able to go?
Probably like 15 miles an hour. Nothing. I mean, nothing crazy, but fast enough that if you fell into an office, a door frame or something, you could probably get
Ooh,
hurt. Yeah,
Yeah.
but those that was really fun. And we used to have what were called their ball fights. Somebody bought, like 10,000 of these foam Planet Earth balls, and then had the their logo printed on them. And we used to, we used to just throw these things at each other and pelt each other. And I will say
They
one of
broke
our
something.
engineers who I still know has a mean fastball. Amazing aim.
Oh, so what happened to that?
Well, he was very good at throwing foam balls wherever he wanted them to go very quickly. And so you can imagine not everybody was 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 happy about his skill.
Aw, well, you
Oh.
practice, you'll get it.
Yeah, yeah. So another thing is, I mean, we one time we went we went on a fishing trip to go catch tuna out in the Pacific Ocean. We went 80 miles out. We had to get there at 3 in the morning, and so everybody but myself decided to go down below decks to sleep. But I was terrified of getting seasick because I really wanted
Oh,
to like bond with everybody. I didn't want to be the one guy who was seasick the whole time. And so I had bought a big bag of ginger candy, and apparently if you keep your glands flowing with saliva, it's less likely that you will get seasick. And so I stayed up on decks all morning and talked with the fishermen, and slowly around seven or so, the rest of the art team started to come up from below decks, and I mean they just looked they looked awful. They were all green in the face, and they looked totally ill, and I think I was the only one who didn't vomit over the sides of this of this boat. The poor boat must have just been like just covered on this stuff on the sides. It's
and
just
the
ridiculous.
ocean.
Yes, yes, and I mean we were way out. I mean the swells were huge, and and then of course after everybody was seasick, they were all fighting, fishing and trying to pull in these little albacore tuna. And albacore tuna are not big, but they're really strong, and so it's very 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 hard to get them out of the water. And when you do get them out of the water, they're jumping and like moving their razor sharp fins as fast as they can. I mean, it sounds like a jazz drummer playing the drums on the deck of the boat, and you have to step on them and hit them as hard as you can with a big sort of wooden mallet or the wooden end of an axe handle, and kill them. Like that's the thing that most most people don't understand when they go on fishing trips is you're killing something. And so we killed these fish, and
Oh my god.
when we killed them, out comes like all this red blood like squirting everywhere. And so people are covered in the stink of fish, and they're covered in like red blood, like they were just part of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Nice, thanks, Michelle. And so they, they all of them, most of them anyhow, got even more sick, because they're covered. They're, and then the ride back was of course very somber and quiet. We had caught a lot of fish, but we were covered in butcher.
Well, now you know how the fishermen feel when they go fishing to catch all these fishes.
That's right. I have the feeling that fishermen are better at it than we were.
Yeah, I'll make
Yeah.
sure that I go to a fisherman expert before I come to you.
So those, I
um,
mean, I could go on and on, but those are very good memories that I've had.
well, that's good. As long as you had a good time and they had a good time, that's all that really matters. Who cares if you got blood on you? You know what I mean? You can wipe that off, but the memories stay forever and ever. So, Now, I know you talked about some developments like the hoverboats and the dogs and other things. Like, what else? Could you explain about more about Saha? Like how that came along?
Can you repeat the question? The connection broke up a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. Uh, could you explain about Saha? Like how that came along? Like how did that all started?
Sure. So when InView was, I'm sorry, when There was trying to find out a little more about its customers and what types of environments its customers might like, um, their their managers and the CEO turned to the art staff to say, okay, make us a few sort of different environments that people can go to, and that you know Rebecca Sheeran, who worked at There as well. She was an art director, and she's excellent, excellent texture painter. She's so good. Hi, Rebecca. You're so good. Um, she built out a lot of what she wanted the dark area known as tier to look like, and then I built out this floating sort of cloud area. And the reason we did those two versus any of the others. I mean, we had tons and tons and tons of different concepts of things we could have done, but we did those two because they were very, very different than the sort of tiki island theme that we had originally started with. And if you recall, way back then, the first island was built into sort of color-coded areas. You know, like you had the Monkey Ruins and Dune Canyon, and each area had its own color feel, so you knew where you were. And we wanted to do the same thing, but have it be a completely different location, but still be there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I get what you're trying to say. Yeah.
Right, and so because we wanted them to be very very different areas, it meant that we wanted to push some of the fantasy aspects. At the same time, we saw a lot of what was happening around us. World of Warcraft was just sort of getting underway, and a couple of other people were doing all kinds of different products that um, were built for a particular audience. But at There, when we were building these experiences and these locations, we didn't really know who our customer was. We couldn't say, for example, we're building a virtual world for suburban policemen, because suburban policemen are really looking for something like this, and so we know who to talk to about what features they want. We didn't do any of that. We didn't know any of that, and so I tried a few designs and then just had a big sort of brain fart one night and came back in the next day with tomes and tomes of concept art about these little floating islands. Like what if you could fly around an area on dragons, but it was more fantasy and less Renfest. And so we ended up never building the dragons, of course, but we built the locations and let people fly around using jetpacks. And that was a tough design job, of course, because remember the recurring theme with most things art related on their engine. Or that you're constantly trading off between your vision and the technical realities. And so, I had envisioned vast seas of islands and, shopping malls on different islands that were connected with bridges and, all kinds of stuff. But we ended up only being able to build, 1/100th of the original idea because of our technical constraints. But that said, it still has the basic feel. It's got the color scheme that we wanted. It's got the basic textures we wanted. It feels like everything is being held up by buoyant objects. and I really like the way it came out. Additionally, I like the way that tier came out, and I like the way that they had built all of the little talismans and runes and the kind of maps that they had built out. Again, tier we only built a small percentage of what we originally had designed, but it really came out pretty cool, I think.
Yes, it definitely did actually come out really nice. I remember I was doing a quest and I had to go up to Saha and use my jetpack to get to the quest, and also look for like their monitor. That was like a weekly event that you had to do. It's actually really cool, and I thought that was great. What they was actually trying to do is that they were trying to get the members to explore there instead of just staying in one location. Okay. And I think that was actually pretty cool, like how I was able to see the original designers that made there and see what kind of work they put in, and it actually came out wonderful.
Cool.
So,
Yeah, I will say I don't know, on the tail end of that experience, I don't know that I would choose to do it again, only because now I know how much work it represents. But at the same time, um, I learned a lot, and I worked with really incredible people, and I would not trade those relationships for anything.
that's really nice. That's really nice to say.
And I met some really wonderful people that were members. I mean, I'm just meeting you guys, over the last couple of weeks, but I'm still in contact with several people who were their users.
Yeah, it's interesting because like the whole point of there was like trying to meet new friends and explore and socialize, and no matter what, we'll always be socializing. And even though you may be thousands of miles, you'll never stop talking to your friends from there, or your staff friends at all. You know what I mean? Because you'll always still be together no matter what, and it's really wonderful.
Cool. Well, appreciate that.
No problem. Um, my next question is, I'm not sure you know about like the space in there, but I like it's not really a question. It's like almost like a statement. But I'm not sure if you were aware that members were taking the jetpacks up into space and drop like a porta zone down there, so they were able to like let's say what's it called? Put like houses up there and all those kind of things. Where I'm not sure if you saw that when you were still with there.
Um, I I don't recall seeing that. However, um, this is what I love about creator communities because if you give people the tools to sort of express themselves the way they like, they are able to um, push those tools in a direction you never, ever, ever would have considered. Right? We built this um, with this planet, right? And it had
Yeah,
physics like we had physics like a real planet, and all the stuff that went into making things work like a planet. And it turns out people didn't want to live on that planet. They wanted to, right? They wanted to tweak it. They wanted to play. They wanted to make it something other than the planet Earth.
yeah, they want to go outside the box, and they
Yeah,
did.
yeah, and right. So when you've got when you've got people living in space, um, that tells you uh, there is a disconnect with the original vision of what there is and what it ended up being.
Yeah, that is definitely true. Um, Now my next question is, could you explain about like the danger zone in there, like the concept of the danger zone, or the area, or the non-player characters?
Um, you know, I I would love to go into more detail on that, but I have to be perfectly honest. I just a lot of it is so old to me now that the details of most of those um, are just not fresh in my memory. They're just not there. Insofar as the NPCs, though, the non-player characters, that's a pretty standard gaming element. The trick with any NPC is understanding why it's important and figuring out a way to make it not creepy. So
Ah.
how did you feel about the NPCs in there?
Actually, when I saw them in the beginning, I thought they were someone just took crayons and just drew on them. You know what I mean? They got like a 3-year-old thing. But later on, as the year progressed, the avatars were, you know what I mean, different. But what was kind of sad though is that like the avatar's hands only had 3 fingers, and the human body has 5. And I thought that was pretty kind of interesting, if you know what I'm saying.
I do know what you're saying, and I mean, really, what can I say? Yeah, you're on the
Yeah.
money.
Yeah, that's true. That is true on that. But otherwise, actually, the avatars did look really nice in there, and I guess in my how should I explain it? In my thoughts, my opinion, actually thought theirs avatar did look a little bit nicer than IMVU's, but to me, I am still new to IMVU,
Hmm.
and I definitely see that you guys have done an amazing job in here. Because when I first came on here, I was a little bit confused, but I do get the hang of it, and it's actually wonderful, like how you guys developed it and everything.
Well, I appreciate that. We've got a lot of work to do, but and when I say we've got a lot of work to do, I mean that we've got a lot of work to do to deliver more cool features based on what we hear people want. Um,
Yeah,
but so far it's going really well, really, really well.
that's great to hear. My next question is, how did the buggies get developed, and why was it so hard to develop it? And could you explain about the one-seater buggy?
Okay, so how were the buggies developed? Was that the first question?
Yeah, like how were they developed?
Sure. So um, we had spent a lot of time building out the physics engine of the world, and making it so your avatar could walk and then run. You gotta crawl before you can walk, um, and
Yep.
we went around with a jetpack. I think very, very early on, and a version of a buggy very, very early on, to see how how driving on the terrain would work. How fun would that be? And then what kind of vehicle manufacturing system would we need to build in order to allow ourselves to build all kinds of different things? So we took that original buggy and we broke it down into component parts so that it would remember, we're trying to get things to be as cheap as possible so that they didn't bring your computer to a grinding halt. But we had to work out how the physics of um, this this body with 4 other moving bodies on it would work. How does turning work? How does skidding work? How do you set the mass of a vehicle? How do you set its power, its friction, all that kind of stuff? Should it kick up dust when it drives? There were all these little questions that we had to answer and build through. Um, and the first several iterations looked okay, like the models were okay, but they did not really perform that well. When we brought people in, they didn't say, "This is fun." They said, "Oh my God, I can't really concentrate on the screen. It's jiggling so much and jittery and awful." So we had to iterate on that buggy quite a bit, but we ended up with a nice, a nice sort of vehicle manufacturing system. And I won't bore you with some of the details of the what did we call them? The Diffie balls, dynamic physics balls that we had to build into each wheel, and the body of the car. So when it crashed into a tree, it would actually bounce off.
No, please
But
explain.
well, so when we and all of the engineers who are watching this are like, yeah, go for it, Matt. Please explain. Um, but the basic idea is that um, we didn't want to say that the mesh of the car defined the what the this is awful. This is like a little piece of hell for me. This is great. What I mean is we didn't want the geometry of the mesh to be what we had to calculate when we were considering whether or not the car crashed into the tree. Instead, we said we don't care about the geometry of the car. Instead, we've got this sort of invisible round shape that is easier to calculate. And if anything tries to bump into this round shape, the round shape is not going to go through it. It's going to bounce off. And so that ball is called a dynamic physics ball, or that's what I think Diffie stands for, and we call them Diffie balls, and that meant all kinds of things. Like each Diffie ball had its own, very, very detailed set of physics that went with it. You had the what was the weight, what was the air friction, what was all this kind of very sort of mathematical equation kind of stuff that was very, 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 very hard for a non-engineer to work with, by the way. And so we massaged that system to be something that was a little easier to work with, and ended up with a buggy that worked pretty well. And then we thought, not everybody wants to get around with their friends, and so let's make a smaller car that is a little faster. Maybe people will want to buy both of them, and so that was why we did that. And then, of course, we built a whole bunch of different vehicles like that Jeep and the truck and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. What about like the one-seater buggy? Like I know like now they're like two-seaters, you know what I mean, and four, but like how come the one-seater buggy never got officially public released?
Because I think that at the time, if I recall correctly, again, it's been a really long time, I think that the issue was that we wanted vehicles that were social, and you could still race and do all this stuff in the two-seater buggy. And so instead of building out vehicles that were loaner vehicles, we did that. Of course, we completely reversed that decision by building all the hoverboards and jetpacks and all those things, because it turns out people did want that, did want to be able to get around. So I think it was just something we didn't revisit.
Okay, yeah, because I remember some members did have the one-seater buggy. I always thought, well, how did that like came about? You know what I mean? But thank you for explaining it.
Hey, no problem. Do you have any sort of last questions for me?
I do have a few more. How much time do we have left, Vicky?
So for me, I have about 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay, so we have
make it closer to 5 minutes for me, just because I have to go take care of real world children.
Oh, your wife could take care of them. You know what I mean? Tell them
Nice.
that if she has a problem, tell her to come to get me, and I'll give you my number, and she can yell at me all she wants, and I'll take the blame if she doesn't do it. My next question is, what was the implement on the unlimited paintball guns? Like, I know they were never really, I guess, supposed to be released, and I guess members found out about them when a few members had them.
I'm sorry. When you spoke it, the signal came across as a little
Oh,
scattered.
I'm sorry. Could you explain about the paintball guns, like how those were developed?
Sure. We we have a lot. We had a lot of people who liked to shoot other people. Were working at there, and they got to live out their fantasy. Let's just be blunt about it. Um, the the uh, the paintball was an early test as well. That comes from the original demo of their in the very very original demo. It was a small world that Will and Jeffrey had built, and that small world had a train, and you could hop on the train and ride around the terrain, and go to a little pond, and on your way to the pond you could pick up a gun like a rifle, and
Oh
you
my
could
god.
see there were ducks, and when you came too close to the ducks would decide to fly away, and you could shoot the duck, and one duck, typically would fall into the water and float there, and then near the water there was a little box that said raft on it, and when you clicked on that box, a raft would inflate, and you could hop on the raft and row over to the duck and get the
Oh my
duck
god.
and collect points, and then you rode back. And I mean, really, this is all very, very rudimentary. The avatar was um, um, it was all procedurally generated, so it was all code, um, and it was cool in its own right. Don't get me wrong, it was pretty cool, but aesthetically wasn't where we ended up. And so then you could hop back over once you'd row back, and then up would come your dog, this beautiful dog. It's just so cute, and you could pick up a frisbee and play frisbee with the dog, and he would go catch it and run back and drop it near your feet and arf arf, like, let's do it again. uh, and there were all kinds of really really wonderful magical moments um, um, in that early demo like that. And so the being able to shoot things, and having those things interact with you based on your shooting was part of there from sort of day one, or at least part of there from day one from my joining. And so we decided very early on, like, this is pretty fun. Let's build an experience, a gun experience. And so of course, people in the room were like, and so you think it's okay to build an experience where people shoot each other? Right. And so we said, well, let's make it paint guns, and that meant we had to build a little particle system, and we had to show, the paint balls traveling through space quickly, and then when they got there, they'd have to explode, and they have to be different colors, and different guns needed to be set up with different colors and different attributes. Um, and so I will say that those early days of playing paintball were so fun because we all
Especially
had the
this,
we all had the
that was
power
the
of
best
God,
part.
Sorry, say that again?
Especially when hitting the staff members, so that was the best time. Just, finding a staff member, paintball them. That was fun.
Yes. So, but we all had the power of God, so we could go in and make our paint guns just like incredibly powerful. Like, and so it was a real pain in the butt if you got shot. You would find yourself like 13,000 miles out at sea. No way of getting
That's
back.
torture. That's mean.
Yeah, but
That's
but at the same time, it meant the stakes were high, and it made the
yeah.
game fun. You
You
know.
should have gave them like some kind of force field so they could at least do it to you.
Right. And actually, so
um.
on the paint gun thing, um, as we were building out new versions of paint guns, and we had a plan of building, like a line of 25 or so that were all different, had different behaviors and shot electricity or shot chickens, that kind of thing. Um, we decided it was a good idea to take our then intern, Julie Chin, who was an animator with us. Hi, Julie. And to take her to a shooting range like a real gun shooting range, and film her shooting a very, very powerful 45 caliber handgun.
Oh my God.
It was, yeah, it was it was not the brightest thing to do in the world, but we put one bullet in the chamber, and we said, "Okay, Julie, we're going to film you. Just hold the gun and fire away." You know, the thing was really heavy in her hands, and she actually she had a good shot, but we filmed it in slow motion, and I think one of our members of our animation team probably still has that video of her arm just sort of like jello in slow motion being put back in space. It was very, very funny. Very funny.
That is pretty funny. So is that how the arm movement goes up? Is that because of her, like how she was shooting the paintball gun? I mean
Yes, it
the
is.
regular gun.
That's
Oh, that's
exactly right.
interesting. Now we know. Like no, I was just curious with the paintball gun. How did like you get the way where the avatar like shoots like all the way? You know what I mean? Like once the paintball gun hits you, like bam, like you start flying off away. I'm not sure you know for sure about that.
I don't remember that.
Okay, no worries.
Sorry.
Um, no problem. I guess one more question, and then I think we'll call it for the day. And for those members who I know didn't get their questions, don't worry. I'll get in touch with Matt one more time and have him write it down, and I'll just post it on, I guess, on the site or into the Facebook page, and you'll get your answer from there. And I apologize about that. Um, so one more question is for like for people who are searching, like for people who are looking for new virtual worlds to interact with and have a great time, what kind of suggestions do you want to give to the members, like to have forever? You know what I mean? When they're in a virtual world.
Hmm. Can you ask the question in a different way?
Sure. When people are entering into a new virtual world, I know sometimes it's hard for them to, you know what I mean, understand the whole concept and everything. What kind of suggestions do you have for the members to when they come into let's say they come into your virtual world and they like have some they want to see some great stuff, like what kind of suggestions do you want to give to the members, like some social environment stuff.
Um, Boy, that's a big question. I think frankly that the future of um, all of the virtual worlds, I think that most virtual worlds are just going to go away. And the idea of the virtual world in quotes as being a great destination, I just don't think that's what the world is interested in consuming. However, I think that the the gameplay of what virtual worlds offer, and like um, the social interactions and the sort of close relationships, the really tight bonds that you can create with people, I think that is where the world is headed. What's nice about what we've all learned about the virtual world space is that this what we call personalized anonymity, where you don't really know the person on the other end, but you get to know them initially by their creative choices. And so it doesn't matter if they're, a hunk in real life or hot in real life, or if they're not in real life. What matters is what's in their brain, who their mind says they are. And I think that matters more and more and more as we become connected virtually on our phones and on Facebook and all the different places where we have personalities. And so to people searching out those types of relationships in using computers, I say look for those services that allow you to be the most creative, that allow you to express yourself in the most amazing ways. Obviously, as the co-founder of InView, I want to push my own product. However, InView is not right for everybody, and it might be that you're looking for some other sort of creative outlet, like if you really like writing or if you really like making music. However, if my guess is that we're all in for a wonderful, wonderful ride, as a lot of the technology that allows people to connect and make really meaningful friendships based on who they want to be, or who they really are inside versus how they were born. I think we're all going to be very, very surprised in 10 years to see that things like InView and things like There, things like Second Life, parts of Second Life, will be commonplace.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate it.
No problem. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. I guess we will conclude this session with another interview with Matt. I'd like to thank Francis7, aka Virtual Vicky, for taking time and recording this interview. And I definitely like to thank you, Matt, for taking your time away from IMVU and your family and spending time for an hour doing this, and I am very grateful of it, and as well as every other member as well are grateful of it as well. And thank you so much.